Hello there, my name is Cameron Smith, and I'm a resident of the borough of Catasauqua. I lived here and grew up here and graduated from Catasauqua High School. I'm a borough council member here in the borough, and I researched Mr. Dery and his mansion for many years now. D.G. Dery was the world's largest independent silk manufacturer. He had upwards of 40 silk mills and 4,000 employees. He was born September 29th, 1865 in Baja, Austria-Hungary, to an upper middle class family. He was educated in Austria-Hungary. He attended St. Mary's Textile Academy and an art school there as well. Realizing that there were better business opportunities in America, Mr. Dery immigrated to America in 1887 to Paterson, New Jersey. There he was the superintendent of a silk mill. He managed the silk mill there. And after a few years, he realized he wanted to start his own business. So he started searching for a location for a silk mill. He visited Lancaster, Allentown, eventually settling on Catasauqua due to the educated labor pool and the resources available to him there. He started his first silk mill in 1897, 10 years after he came to America. The first mill was on Ray Street in Catasauqua. It had 200 looms and 200 employees. Within a year, Mr. Dery doubled his business to 400 looms and 400 employees. Mr. Dery manufactured broad silk, which is a wide cloth used for dresses, ties, and different things needing a wide cloth. Mr. Dery's product was so successful and well made that he rapidly expanded. Within a few years, he opened a mill in Allentown and a mill in Emmaus, and he just kept opening mills all across the eastern United States. At the same time that Mr. Dery was expanding his business, he purchased a home at the corner, or an empty lot at the corner of 5th and Pine in Catasauqua. He built a small house there in the same style that the house that exists today is in. He built it using Colorado limestone in a Roman brick shape. A funny story, Mr. Dery had all of that limestone brought in by train and rail car. And it took many rail cars to bring all of the materials needed from Colorado. Within a few years, around 1910, he started enlarging his mansion. Between 1910 and 1923, Mr. Dery expanded his mansion to the ginormous size it is today. Mr. Dery's height was in 1923. That was his peak. At that point, he had gotten so big that he tried to corner the world silk market. To do this, he took out loans from the Silk Manufacturers Bank. And in the olden days, all the silk manufacturers pooled their money together in that industry to finance business expansions, repairs, and other projects that manufacturers might need financing for. And he took out these loans and mortgages to try and buy this mass quantity of raw silk that he needed to corner the market. Realizing what he was trying to do, other silk manufacturers alerted the Japanese government, at the time the largest, and still is the largest producer of raw silk. They have just a very expertise in high quality silk making and mulberry leaves and silkworms. The Japanese government then flooded the market with even more raw silk, thereby devaluing the materials that Mr. Dery had purchased. When it came time to pay back the loans that he had taken out, his materials were worth much less, and they realized that these loans were taken out on a fraudulent basis. Mr. Dery and 7 other executives had fraudulently overvalued the company when they took out these loans, and they did this by, when they did the assessment, they would count how many bales of silk were at each plant. And as the accountants were doing this, Dery and the 7 other executives would come in at night and move the bales of raw silk from the counted and the uncounted piles, thereby drastically overvaluing his business. Finding this out, his creditors took him to court, where he was forced to enter into bankruptcy in 1923. Mr. Dery then was forced to sell all of his possessions. His mansion at that time was in its final state. It was 25,000 square feet, and still is. It's got 50 rooms. There are 3 floors above ground, 2 floors below ground. There's a formal living room, formal dining room, ballroom, music room, dance floor, mezzanine, conservatory, observatory, solarium, library, gym, sauna, there was a Turkish bath, and there's even a pool in the sub-basement. There were 11 garages with tunnels connecting the garages in the house, and still are. You can walk underneath the yard to the garages. And there were about 10 bedrooms, with a bathroom for each bedroom and almost every room. He really expanded his mansion to house his massive art collection. He had extensive jades, chinas, rare antiques, old masters from the 1600s, and just a huge collection of stuff. Rolls-Royce limousine, vehicles, he had servants. And really at this height, he was humiliated by having to go to bankruptcy court and to be forced from his company that he created. They had auctioned off all of his belongings, all of his artwork, collectibles. They sold his house at auction. Thankfully, he had friends in the right places, and his friends bought back his house for what he owed, and they sold it to him and his family for $1. He was able to continue living here till 1934, when his wife died. He ended up moving to a smaller house across the street when his wife died. He had really continued living here and tried to maintain his lifestyle for his wife. He was able to limp along with a few more silk mills until that time, when a strike finally put him totally out of business. He died March 5th, 1942, in the smaller house across the street. His mansion was then sold for back taxes. Mr. Dery was actually buried in a pauper's grave. He has no tombstone, and him and his wife were both in an unmarked grave. To rise from that height to that low must have been a humiliation for him. It must have been very humiliating.